2 days ago, NPR actually put out its own statement from its ombudsman and from our own newsroom saying that we would be pulling back on the use of the name of the Washington team, as we will call it today. Talk about the decision that brought your newspaper staff to make this call. What was the thing that made you all say, you know, we don't want to use this name anymore?
So during the 2012-2013 school year, a Native American parent within our district started coming to school board meetings and talking against the name. And we decided at the beginning of the 2013 school year that maybe we should talk about it. And this is a conversation that the 2001 editors of the Playwikian have done before. And so we said, what can we do? And is this word okay to be our school mascot? Which is the R word, if it wasn't obvious already, sorry. And so we then took a vote to remove the word from the publication entirely. So it was a 14-7 vote, 14 the majority, to remove the word. And so we then published an editorial as to why we would no longer be using the R word, and then also the dissenting view, which both of those editorials have now been first place award winners, which is really incredible for our program. Yes, yes. But from that, right after the editorial was published, 2 days later, our principal sent a directive to my advisor and said that we must use it if we receive it from anyone. We're not allowed to edit it like editors should be able to do. And so we were stuck. We didn't know if we were actually allowed to have the right or if it was actually being taken away from us.
And this prior review policy essentially said that, okay, maybe you guys can make this decision, but if someone sends in an editorial, if someone sends in a letter to the editor, they should be allowed to use it.
Yes.
Now, this is not actually all that unusual. Even professional major news organizations right now are sort of taking this same approach. But what was your problem with what the school was trying to do here?
They were telling us that we are not allowed to be editors, pretty much. Within the Pennsylvania State Code, it says that we are allowed to edit as we see fit. That's pretty much exactly what not exactly word for word, but it says that it gives us the right to do it, and as does the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We have it. So that's where we realized that maybe this isn't right, and that's when we contacted the SPLC. And here we are.
And here you are. It's worked out okay for you so far.
Yes.
What was the reaction like? And by that I mean from your peers, from their parents. I think we all know what football towns are like.
Yes.
And it gets rough.
So after that, we had students rip up newspapers saying they were going to take them home and set them on fire. Yeah, we were sort of like at war with our school because we didn't ask for the name to be changed. We just said we're not going to publish it. And if they had read the editorial, they probably would have known that instead of just ripping it up. They didn't know how to separate the two issues, that we have the right to do this, and also that we're allowed to oppose the term. We're allowed to do that.
Did you find that you were in the minority, essentially? I mean, or was there any support that grew once school officials got involved?
Nationally, yes. Without a doubt, nationally, we have the most incredible support from not only just the nation, from specifically Native Americans who have thanked us, which is incredible. It is so amazing. And to know that we have actually done something and we have actually made a little bit of a difference. And we definitely have been empowered throughout all of this through our support, the support that we've received, which is really great.
I'm going to have you pass the mic to Tanvi Kumar. And your story, which I really actually read all the way through with my husband over breakfast this morning, which don't judge us because it was pretty intense, has some really frank descriptions of sexual abuse. And how did you get this story? This is me just being a jealous journalist. Like, how did you get people to tell you this? What was the germ of the idea?
So I guess where the story kind of started for me was I noticed that there was an influx of using rape as just, slang, like, oh, that test raped me, or this sports team raped that sports team. And a girl at my school opened up about her rape, and she was tormented on social media. And it's an issue that affects 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 boys, and I just got to thinking, there have to be people out there who want to share their story.
And this is just the kind of low-level conversation among students. This isn't something, like when you say that this person said that they were raped, this isn't something that, they've gone to authorities and talked to teachers or that sort of thing. It's just something kids know.
Right. I think later on, actually, there was some police action taken, but right away, it was just more of her saying, like, opening up about what happened to her, and just people took to social media to mock the situation, which kind of infuriated me. So I decided to see if there was something out there that I could get the perspective of people who are affected by this issue, and get their take on it, and have them tell their stories and see rape culture through their eyes.
And what was it like actually trying to get more voices for this story? I mean, how exactly did you reach out to other women in this case?
So first I reached out to my local sexual assault agency, and they were wonderful, and they put me in touch with a girl who was very willing to share her story. And then I kind of made surveys about people's opinion on rape culture. And as I was handing them out, 2 girls approached me, and they're like, we want to talk to you, we want to share our stories. And as a result, I had 3 anonymous sources share what happened to them.
This is actually one of my favorite parts of this story, because you're just in the hallway handing out this survey, right? Which, the rest of us were like, call Pew, like maybe Brookings has a thought about this. So I like the idea that you went on and did this yourself. What was interesting about this survey is that it determined that 80% of students had said that they had heard a rape joke in the past month, which is not that surprising. I think we all know that in high school and at that age, you are often making jokes, talking about things in a way that your parents do not realize that you're talking about it in that way, right? Culturally, there's always a kind of divide. Generationally, there's a divide. But the administrators dismiss that figure as too extreme, right?
Right. It was 80% of students surveyed, but I think that our principal came in and talked to our journalism class, and he said it reflected negatively on our high school. Of course it does. That's kind of the point.
This is also one of the things I think that's so important about this work is as we as journalists at a certain point, right, age out of doing the young people's story. And I think that one of the great things about student journalists is that they're doing what you're supposed to do, is reporting in the community that, is your community and ferreting things out. The idea of rape culture, right? This is not language I used in high school, and I was in high school a while ago, but not that long ago. And the sort of broader activism around combating sexual assault, we're hearing this at Harvard University, right? We're hearing this in the military. It's become a national issue. Did this story and did this national conversation affect how this was seen at your school?
Oh, without a doubt. Actually, the day we printed and it came out and we went to sell, I had a teacher that I didn't know very well come up to me and share her story of sexual assault.
Like in the hallway?
Yeah, I never.
That's kind of intense.
Yes, very intense. I never really expected that to happen. But I realized a bunch of people came up to me and they said that teachers were actually reading the article out loud to their class and asking them to share their opinions, and it facilitated a discussion. And now our local sexual assault agency actually goes in and hosts seminars on rape culture at my high school as a result of this. So.
You know, I'm going to ask a couple questions to both of you. You can pass the mic back and forth. But to start, you know, what did you find more difficult to experience personally? Because you're putting yourself out there as journalists, maybe before you really think you're journalists. And was the response more difficult to handle from the school or from your peers?
That is a good question. I would definitely say it's a mixture of both. It's hard to pinpoint one of the two because, especially in my situation, it was seeming as if I was defiant when rather I respect authority very highly. And from the peers, they're the kids you're with in class, and when they're sort of like shunning you and they don't want to listen to you, that's a really hard place to be in when you've done all of your research and you can't convince them to do theirs. It's a really hard place to be, but I mean, it's what you have to do.
Tanvi, for you?
I mean, when I write for the student body, not to please the administration. So for me, it was just really moving to see, as a result of when our prior review policy was implemented, to see students, you know, write emails to our superintendent, sign our petition on change.org. I mean, to me, that was incredible, just the mobilization. Did you sense any divide in gender in terms of the response to the story? Yes, actually, there's a little bit of divide. There were a few, I guess, boys who felt that the male perspective wasn't covered enough in the story, but I don't think it needs to be, so.
In her defense, the focus of the story is very much these people's specific experiences. You know, no matter what your age, I think when you come to journalism, and I've known people who are, you know, kids like you, who are like winning awards in high school, and people who are well into adulthood, and at NPR, more than one or two lawyers, which we'll talk about that later. I don't understand that switch, who decide to come to journalism, and we want to be like, it doesn't pay the same. But they come anyway. And no matter their age, they have really idealistic ideas about kind of what it might be like. Now, you guys didn't grow up with the kind of post-Watergate, you know, nostalgia, right? You have your own kinds of nostalgia. But how did this change your idea about what it means to be a journalist? Like, how was it basically different than what you expected?
I think it just really proves how the journalist's job is to speak truth to power. And that's a phrase that I had heard before, but I really didn't know the definition of until I actually had experience.
Till power is at your door,
exactly,
threatening to suspend
exactly.
you. That's when you know it.
But yeah, that is definitely, that's the job of a journalist, is to speak truth to power, and I'm so lucky to now be able to do that and have found my voice to speak the truth.
Tanvi? Yeah. How is it different from what you expected?
Well, I guess I just thought I'd see a lot more support. But for me, it reiterated the fact that there definitely needs to be a divide between those in charge and the press. Because, I mean, I don't know, there's a saying, you know, like, everything, I mean, it's not about propaganda, you know, it's about telling the truth. It's not public relations, so.
And it can be lonely. I just noticed you saying that you thought there'd be more support. There can be days, I'm sure, Mr. Kelman will talk about that, where you're like, is anyone out there? Right? Does anyone care that I'm doing this story? Until one day they really care that you're doing this story. And it means a lot. It's still early for both of you. So I'm not saying you have to be journalists, or that you should be. I mean, by that I kind of am saying it. But are there other avenues that you're looking at? Are there other jobs, careers that you're considering, or has this kind of planted the seed?
Well, for me personally, I'm a freshman at GW, and I'm currently in the School of International Affairs, but I guess for this, what was most moving for me was the fact that I was able to tell other people's stories, and that's just something I want to be able to do for the rest of my life, so.
Gillian?
I definitely can't get away from journalism. I can't get away from it at all.
It's a disease now, you realize.
It is, and I have it. It's just like Ebola. No.
Well, not contagious. I mean, it's a little, you just get it.
And this also has opened up another door for me, which is law, because as I've been learning about law and realizing that the law protects me, I would like to also maybe one day be protecting others with my knowledge of the law, which is another thing that has, another door that's been opened. But either way, I mean, I think that if you're with both ways, you're speaking the truth, I guess, still.
All right, work in the room. A round of applause for that answer. I mean, come on. That's exactly the way to do it. Well, Gillian McGoldrick and Tanvi Kumar, thank you so much for sharing your stories. It was amazing.
Good job, good job.
Now, Tanvi Kumar was one of about 20,000 people, young and old, whose lives were directly touched by a very special SPLC-sponsored project, which you heard a little bit about earlier, the Tinker Tour. During the past school year, one of SPLC's longtime attorneys, Mike Headston, co-piloted a 21-foot RV around the country with a true American legend, Mary Beth Tinker. It was Mary Beth Tinker's Supreme Court case, of course, Tinker versus Des Moines, that guaranteed students the right of free expression, even on school grounds and during school time. The Tinker Tour covered 24,390 miles in 31 states, and it inspired countless young people like Tanvi who attended a Tinker Tour rally to stand up for their own rights. And Mary Beth Tinker is here with us tonight. Please stand up.